I have to go pick up meat. Okay, but I started my thing. All right. Morning, kitty cats. Let me know if my sound or whatever is not working. It's been a while since I've done one of these things. Life has been abundant. It's been very full. I've been preoccupied with a bathroom remodel and family things and I don't know, a lot of stuff, but I wanted to do this morning, and I have not even quite an hour. We'll see how far I go. I don't know if other people. We'll see. PVK hasn't been putting out a lot of videos. Other people haven't been doing stuff. What's up, David? Good to see you. I'm hearing many good things about your soon-to-be released contributions to the Friday Morning Nameless's news segment. I think, isn't it? A Corner News Things? Dude, is this who I think it is? Crazy. What's up, Mandy? I was just wondering about you the other day. We were talking about you at Estuary. Anyhow, good to see all you guys. Okay, what was I just talking about? Yeah, dude, it's been a long time. Yeah, dude. My daughter's making fun of me. I have morning voice. Yeah, so life update. Yeah, that's what's been going on. Very busy with kid things, preparing for the upcoming winter, some Minnesota winter. But some interesting things have been happening recently online. I think the most interesting thing, long time, Linda Ross. That's hilarious. That's a deep TLC cut. If you know about Linda Ronstadt right now. But some of the stuff I want to talk about, and life updates will happen as I talk about this, but is the big thing is the Peterson-Dawkins conversation. And it's very interesting for TLC type people because it's bridging the atheism, the new atheism gap with a kind of reemergence, rediscovery of religious practice, of different forms of belief in God that have emerged in kind of this post Jordan Peterson world, talking about archetypes and faith and things. And that conversation was, so Paul has talked about this a lot on Twitter. There were two comments. I can't remember. The second one I can't remember. One of them was Alex O'Connor said, "Never before have I felt more like a corpus callosum," which is the bridge, the unity between the right and the left hemispheres of the brain, which harkens to Ian McGilchrist stuff, right and left brain things, the man who thought his wife was a hat, and how the brain works. My daughter's eating oatmeal over here, and she laughed at the name of that book, which that book is kind of an interesting book. You'd probably like to read that book. But it's just an interesting thing about how the brain works. Sam Tiedemann, my friend, and Sam and I had a conversation about right and left brain things, and that conversation, for as much as we talk about right and left brain stuff in the corner, I think there's a lot more to still talk about there. And I think Sam and I had this brief little interaction where I was saying, the left brain is fine. The left brain is good as long as it knows its place and is in submission to the right brain. And Sam pushed back. He's like, I just still don't know if McGilchrist is quite right about that, with the right brain being the master. And I'm like, oh, I absolutely think he is. I absolutely think the right brain is the master, but never, my qualification of that comment would be that it's never in a way that can be a malevolent dictator. The right brain, it's impossible for the right brain to be a malevolent dictator over the left brain as a master, because it can only ever be a proper master because it's apophatic. It sees in a feminine generative way. It cannot ever impose. There is no, I would probably say this. there is no malevolent feminine in the right brain. And I think somebody was saying, Sam was saying he thinks right brain, left brain being masculine and feminine is kind of a proper layover. And I think that's true. I think in that sense, the feminine is the master because it is the space in which new actuality can manifest. It's the dream, it's the spiritual dream out of which actuality can manifest. In that sense, it's almost like pure potential. It's which reminds me of another conversation. What's the physicist Brian Cox was on Rogan, and I feel like that was a really good conversation. Actually, it reminded me of really early conversations in the corner. They were talking about black hole singularity. I mean, they were wondering about things and talking about science in a way that was actually in line of something else I want to talk about, which is Anatheism, which is something Rupert Sheldrake talks about. And I shared this with a group chat the other day. I want to just read it, actually, because I use the Brave search engine, and they have an integrated AI where you can search things with AI. And AI is just a great summarizer. And so I searched Anatheism according to Rupert Sheldrake, because sometimes Anatheism is just equated with essentially agnosticism, which is stupid. You don't need another word that means the same thing as another word as some other word. But so Rupert Sheldrake's Anatheism definition. It says, according to Rupert Sheldrake, Anatheism refers to a rediscovery of God or a transcendent dimension in a secular age. So think a secular age, that book. Think urban monoculture. Think Tom Holland's Secularity Post-Christianity. Think liberalism broadly. It's a rediscovery of God in a godless world. Sheldrake argues that modern science and technology have led to technology. I always am thinking of McLuhan in regards to technology. Have led to and Gabriel Marcel, I suppose, have led to a widespread secularization, which is the urban monoculture. That's like what's their names talk about? Dark glasses, create our own religion, have lots of babies, couple, whatever their name is. So Sheldrake argues that modern science and technology have led to a widespread secularization, causing many people to lose touch with their spiritual and religious roots. Anatheism, in this sense, is a movement that seeks to reconnect with the divine, not by rejecting science, but by acknowledging its limitations and recognizing the existence of mysteries that lie beyond its scope. God is that which lies forever just beyond the limits of what we already seem to know. Clem Snide. Clem. Eve Barzilay. Sheldrake contends that Anatheism is not a return to traditional religion, but rather a new form of spirituality that emerges from the intersection of science and mysticism. It involves a willingness, and science and mysticism. What is that? Right brain, left brain. The expressed, scientism, because this is where I don't like the conflation between science and empiricism, which I would reference again, the phenomenal conversation from, I don't know, a number of years ago now. There's a clip of it, of when Rogan debated with Firas Zahabi about they debated science, essentially. If you YouTube Firas Zahabi, Firas Zahabi, Zahabi, whatever. Firas Zahabi, who's an MMA coach, fantastic. He's a Muslim guy, but loves philosophy, and he's really awesome. And they had this conversation about scientific truth, and that's almost, to me, it's almost like one of the best ways to explain the difference between empiricism and scientism. Radical empiricism is just phenomenology. It's just your experience of observing a perception, which gets us much closer to Barfield, which is much closer to the right way to see and understand things, because it's closer to what seeing actually is and what perception actually is, not the narratival interpretation of the perception, which always gets us into which can really lead into a lot of problems unless you have iconic thinking. So let's keep going. Onward. Theo Vaughn, thank you for the onward. Sheldrake Sheldrake contends, so isn't Sheldrake so awesome? Let's get more Sheldrake. That Anatheism is not a return to traditional religion. So it's not a restorationist romantic return to, oh, remember when things were great. It's not that hyper-conservatism that is just like, let's go, like I'll pick on the ortho bros because I'm Orthodox. That's like, let's get back to like Byzantium. Let's recreate Byzantium. It's some Byzantine fetishization of, when things were perfect. No, faithful innovation. Onward, further up and further in. There is a way to innovate, to actually be creative and faithful, because it's that Berdyaev quote from my boy, Graham Pardon, which is creativity is the enemy of idolatry. Like you can't be idolatrous if you're creative. And by that, I mean actually creative, actually creating things, because if you're creating things, it's coming out of the right brain and it's manifesting in the left. If you're trying to do something, if you're trying to just recreate something and regurgitate something, you're not actually being creative. You're making propaganda. You're letting it control you. It's got to just flow through you from the muse like a conduit. And that's being creative. That kind of stuff is coming. That's like when Rogan talks about, where do ideas come from? Where does, or I watched, oh man, I would love to watch. I actually just want to watch this clip because of this. Can I find it real quick? There's too many things. I really do just think in terms of mosaics. It's unbelievable. Like I start talking and all of a sudden I'm like, this thing, that thing, this thing. I watched a clip the other day of, and I don't even know how I found it, of, what's his name? Bob Dylan. And he was talking about writing some of his old songs and lines, and it was so good. Oh my gosh, it's not in there. Why is it not in my watch history? It must have been in Twitter or something like that. Isn't that terrible? This is why you need a slave monkey army. But he was essentially saying, he was quoting, it was an interview, and someone asked him about creativity and writing songs, like some of the songs he's most famous for, and he quoted a line from a song. I don't even remember what song it was. And Bob Dylan basically said, yeah, I'm not capable of doing that anymore. And the guy was like, what? You're not capable of writing that song that you wrote? Because Bob Dylan's known as this great lyricist. And he said, and it's one of those times where Bob Dylan, he's one of those people that can kind of mess with you. Like you don't really know. He keeps you guessing. He's like Tom Waits has a great line about keeping people guessing. And Bob Dylan's very much that way. And he said, yeah, I don't know. He's like, I did that. And and he was basically just saying, like, that just came to me. It just flowed through me. And it was at this particular space and time when the muse was just really blessing him and pouring out wonder and glory through Bob Dylan. And so it is Bob's, but it's also not his. It's that non-dual thing. It is and is not his. And Bob's like, yeah, I can do a lot of things now, but I can't do that. Bob Dylan is a Satanist. Oh my gosh. People are so ridiculous. Okay, back to the Anatheism quote. And I mean ridiculous in the best possible way. So it involves a willingness to explore the unknown, to question the dominant scientific narratives, and to engage with experiences that cannot be fully explained by materialism or reductionism. Yeah, awesome. In Sheldrake's view, Anatheism is characterized by a sense of awe, wonder, and reverence for the mysteries of existence, as well as a commitment to exploring and understanding the nature of consciousness, the universe, and our place within it. Anatheism is not opposed to science, but rather seeks to complement and deepen our understanding of the world by acknowledging the existence of non-material realities and dimensions. Key aspects of Anatheism, according to Sheldrake: rediscovery of God or a transcendent dimension in a secular age, acknowledgement of the limitations of science and technology, exploration of mysteries and unknowns beyond materialism and reductionism, emphasis on awe, wonder, and reverence for the mysteries of existence, commitment to understanding consciousness, the universe, and our place within it, a complementary relationship with science rather than opposition. So that just sounds like a healthy balance between what you know and what you don't know, or knowing that you don't know. It's that Socratic, learned ignorance. Falling off the peak of Mount Stupid with Dunning-Kruger. It's like knowledge. What is it? Knowledge. Oh my gosh. Knowledge and what is it? Competency versus time? No. Knowledge and time, and then competency. And like when you know very little about something, your confidence. No, that's what it is. It's knowledge and confidence. Is that it? Yeah. And then the line is competency. And as you know very little, you're just unbelievably confident. But it's because you don't know anything. You have very little understanding of something in a robust way, in a tried way. That the testing of your hypothesis or the testing of your faith has not produced perseverance. And so you have all this knowledge, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh crap, I don't know anything. I know very little. You fall off the peak of Mount Stupid, your confidence plummets. But then if you endure and you keep working at it, you get competency. You actually get good knowledge. I thought you were asking me how is my morning. My morning is great, Jason. It's great that you're here. Okay, I want to play a few things. I want to talk about a few other things, and then I want to open this up before I have to leave because I don't have time. Okay. And I want to look at some comments. Also got a lot of good friends here. This is fantastic. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and this isn't to put you on blast again, and I don't even think you know or are paying attention to any of this, but Nathan Jacobs. Paul brought up Nathan Jacobs in his members only video recently because Nathan Jacobs put out like what was it? It's a 3-hour tour. A 3-hour tour on Archetypes, Inspiration, Christianity, a reply to Jordan Peterson and Dawkins. And I had some comments in there and clips from it. So I'll probably just play my... Don't start playing. Stop it. I'll probably just start playing my the little places that I wanted to, that I thought were good, or that I felt the need to comment on. Because essentially what Dr. Jacobs, Nathan, said in that conversation is that one of the big holdups in the Dawkins, Alex O'Connor, Corpus Callosum mediated conversation with Jordan Peterson was Dawkins really tried to stick Peterson on the historicity question, which is a Brandon Graham Dempsey thing. It's this people. This is what I would say. If you are, I really do believe this. This isn't to diminish the historicity question. This came out on Twitter. If you are really focused on the historicity question, you are a modernist. That's what I would say. Is you're still stuck in the modernity question, in the modernity frame, and you are not. I would argue that you don't yet have a healthy relationship with proper knowing, which is knowing as you are known, which is the personalist knowing, which is the integration of all the 4 Ps. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. Peterson kept saying it doesn't matter. He just kept saying it was the wrong focus. And so what Nathan Jacobs goes, he lays out, I think I put a timestamp on when he actually gets in. He basically just goes through a bunch of history of philosophy. And he talks a lot about Hegel. He talks a lot about what does he talk about? He has timestamps in here. So he talks about it's great. He has a lot of really great timestamps on here. He goes through way more work with his videos than I do. Good grief. He talks about Hegel, realism. A lot of what he's talking about is realism versus nominalism. And that's Nathan Jacobs. That's like a cliff notes of what Nathan Jacobs is really focused on and what he thinks is the main problem with the modern world, which is realism versus nominalism. I don't think so. I think even talking about nominalism and realism is still to be in the abstract world. It's still to be in what I call divided man, and it's not to be in personalist knowing, because you can be right and be wrong. Here's the thing. There's 2 quotes that I would like to say that realism and nominalism isn't the main issue, but there's a deeper issue. The thing behind the thing behind the thing, to quote the great Rob Bell, is you can be right about realism and nominalism and still not act as if in the right way, which is why I love Jordan Peterson. You can be correct about realism and nominalism. You can say the right things about it. You can self-identify as being a realist because that's the correct one, right? According to Nathan Jacobs. And I think it's true. I think that's right. It is correct. However, you cannot act that way. So you can be right and be wrong. And that's Jordan Peterson's great contribution to this. And so you can focus on the historicity of Jesus or the virgin birth or the ark or whatever, all the stuff T. Grog, my friend, likes to bring up. You can be right, you can have the correct objective view about this, but be wrong. You cannot live it correctly. Even the demons believe and shudder. And so to focus on that, to put that thing as the most important part, is to miss what I think is the most important part, which is to act as if. The point is to live everything, Rilke. The point is to actually embody Christ to the world. The point is to actually take care of orphans and widows. This is true religion, to take care of orphans and widows, to give someone who's thirsty a cup of water, to love your enemies. If you acknowledge realism and and deny nominalism, and you do not love your enemy, are you a Christian? No, you're not. So like this is what I would say to Nathan Jacobs is like I think Nathan Jacobs, that this is where I push on him, is he can be right about all the ideas philosophically, and it doesn't matter. In the end, it's just straw. It doesn't matter unless you live it. And so like he had one point in here. I want to play a couple of the points, and one of them I think was the tell of where he I'll play some. Okay. I need to be quiet and play a couple things and then open this up. Share screen. And I want to play some section. I want to play a clip from Outgrowing New Atheism from Justin Brierley and Alex O'Connor, which is really good, which Rod shared with me, my boy Rod. And then I wanted to play some Dawkins Peterson things, but maybe I won't. Maybe we'll just talk about it. Let's play this clip first. Share this screen. These are my comments. I think I queued it up. Listen, also, if my internet's acting slow, PVK, have a little grace. I have fiber. I don't know what's wrong with it. Okay. Let's play this section. Do I have it too fast? This is where you should have branding. No, I don't. I haven't set it up too fast. All right. Let's play. Let me know if the audio is working.
As I said, it would probably have a lot of heterodox connotations from a Christian perspective, but it wouldn't be non-realist. You would be saying in some meaningful way that God is the one, driving that text forward and orchestrating in his providence the movement and the evolution of the text toward truth, right? Some sort of objective truth that maps onto the patterns that, God is instilling into the world. Okay, that would be a meaningful way of saying something like that. Okay, so the third possible meaning. This meaning would be something like what you would find in a leftist Hegelian, where what you would say is
Okay, the reason I wanted to play that is he was talking about reasons why Jordan Peterson would give the answer that he's giving, which is I don't know, or I don't want to give the answer on historicity. And I can't remember all the reasons he says. Watch his full video if you want to. I don't remember the details. But he was essentially contrasting. I think he's wrong about Peterson of why. And then the second reason, or the second thing I'd really push Nathan Jacobs on, is he has these characterizations of Hegel. He has positive Hegelians and negative Hegelians, which he calls like a leftist Hegelian, which is the Hegelian who denies the existence of God. And then there's a kind of Hegelian who would affirm God, but would perhaps deny doctrinal realities about Christian theology, such as the incarnation, the virgin birth, and things like that. I think that's right. And I don't know that that's true. And I mainly don't know that's true because I trust Jordan Daniel Wood, and Jordan Daniel Wood really likes Hegel. And as much as I know about Hegel from secondhand, I've never read Hegel, from Jordan Daniel Wood, from Peter Rollins, from other people that I trust. And guess what? Everything comes from trust. Everything. You don't know anything from facts. You know everything because you trust people. I trust Jordan Daniel Wood. I trust Peter Rollins. So then I trust what they say about Hegel. That's how it works fractally in this Russian nested doll things. You don't just trust propositions. Facts don't exist. So you don't trust them. But I think I wonder a little bit if Nathan Jacobs' understanding of Hegel is right, because that's something Jordan Daniel Wood's been saying a lot on Twitter. He was saying a lot on Twitter. On X, let's say that, is that a lot of the greats like Nietzsche, Hegel, the really great thinkers are often misunderstood. And a lot of their followers often break down into sects because they're probably, this is that really great section and video from Chris Green in his conversation with Paul, where he talks about specialists simplifying things. Because when you take these great thinkers that are paradigm changing thinkers that say things that are like giants of history, you know, and we stand on the shoulders of giants. So like say Hegel or Nietzsche or something, Jesus, they're saying things that are so fecund, so profound that most people, they're so brilliant. Einstein, they're paradigm shifting. Galileo, that they change the way that you see the world. And most of their followers aren't as brilliant in a technical sense, and they don't see what they see. And so they simplify it and they distill it and they take little things out of it, but they don't retain the fullness of the complexity of the vision of the mosaic that this brilliant person saw. And then they splinter because they're not seeing the thing in the fullness. They're taking pieces of it and simplifying it and distilling it. And these greats, I think, are so often easily misunderstood. And Hegel would be one of those, most certainly. And and so I don't know essentially this is my answer to the Jordan Peterson thing. The reason I think that Jordan Peterson doesn't want to give an answer about the historicity question in regards to Christian theology is because he doesn't want to feed into the idolatry of identitarians. Because you can be right and be wrong. You could say all the right things and not love your neighbor and not love your enemy. And I think in the exact same way that people recycle and they feel good about themselves because they feel like they're doing good things, when who knows if it's actually helping the environment, because who knows what the big recycling truck goes and does with it. I mean, I've heard in some cities, like they just take it to the landfill anyhow, or if it's not uber clean, or if it's not the certain kinds of recyclables, if it's maybe not cans or whatever, they just throw it in the landfill anyhow, or it's too costly to actually recycle it. But it makes you feel good about yourself, and then you think you're doing something, but you're not actually doing something. In the same way, if you just affirm the proper propositional ideas about any said given topic, and then you don't act as if, live accordingly to what that means in the world, and the person is the nexus and the locus of all meaning, you know, you're a clanging gong or a banging cymbal. If you have all knowledge, let's just read 1 Corinthians. How about it? I have my phone. Do I have daughter whose name I do not want to say on the internet? I should have a Bible around, but I don't know. There's maybe one in the drawer. What's the difference? Just give me any one of them. A black one from over there. But I can just look it up on my phone. Let's read it. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am nothing. You know, that whole thing. I mean, you get it. You can look it up. If we get a Bible, we'll stop and read it. But it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is if you love people, including your enemies. And guess what? That's really hard. It'll probably kill you. To love your enemies, it'll probably kill you. And that's what it means to be a Christian. I think that's really probably the easiest way to distill it. So Paul's definition of what it means to be a Christian is, oh, thank you. This is probably an ESV, isn't it? No, because this is present New King James. Boom. Let's get there. How fast does it take Luke to get to 1 Corinthians? Romans, Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians. People should just read 1 Corinthians over and over and over and over because it's amazing. That's what I should just do on these live streams. No, I want to talk, but I could just read 1 Corinthians, and that would be just as good. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I have become sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, all mysteries, you understand all mysteries and all knowledge. Also look up what understand means, because I don't think understand here is pistis, which is faith. I don't think that's the word for faith. There's different words in the Greek. So what does it mean to understand? You know, that's a big Jordan Peterson thing, the lightsaber of what does it mean to understand. It's not the kind of knowing that he's talking about, because he's because he's negatively describing this. So understanding all mysteries and all knowledge, but not in the way that makes him act as if. So this is the whole thing. What does it mean to believe in God? This is the whole question that people keep asking Jordan Peterson. What does it mean? Does it mean to understand all mysteries and all knowledge? No. No, it doesn't. Because that's what Paul's talking about. And though now I'm maybe correcting myself here. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so as to move mountains. Wow. But have not love, I am nothing. Can you have all faith and have all faith to be able to move mountains and not love? I don't know. That's right there. That's a hard one for me. And though I bestow all the goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, but have not love, it profits me nothing. This is why I love the movie and the book Silence. Yeah, Ty was laughing at me because I'm proudly saying things, and then I read the next line of the verse and I'm corrected. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up. Does not behave rudely. Does not seek its own. Is not provoked. Thinks no evil. Does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. There you go, T-Grog. Love rejoices in the truth. Bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. But whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Sorry, Mark Parker. Happy clappy. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. Sorry, rationalists. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see as in a mirror dimly, but then face to face, encountering face to face, Northwestuary. Now I know in part, but then I shall know Now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known. Maybe one of my favorite verses in the Bible. Ooh, look at this beautiful thing we've made. It's a little, I forget what these things are called. And now abide faith, hope, and love. These three, but the greatest is love. Okay, we read some Bible. We've read some Bible on the stream. Okay, I want to play another clip here, and then I want to open this up before I have to go. I'm using too much time. Okay, let's move onward. What did I say to even that place that I played? I felt like it was worthless. I said, yeah, I don't know about this. What about Maximus? This is an issue you should talk about with Jordan Daniel Wood if you want an academic conversation, or me if you want a personal one, where I explain how I see these things from a non-academic standpoint. And he was just talking about the positive Hegelian, which he also thought wasn't Christian. But I don't know about that, because this is also a thing Nathan Jacobs talks about as if it's, I think, simpler than it is. The distinction between pantheism and panentheism, which to me seems like it can be I don't know, like a technical, pedantic distinction that I think is really hard to understand. And I could insert one of probably my favorite Calvin quote from the Institutes about discernment between the lines of God and man. And how I say, I think every meaningful intellectual conversation is about the nature of the God-man relation and Chalcedon. I mean, I think that's what is going on between God and man, and that line, and where that line is complicated. And I think, Irenaeus, God became man that man should become God. In what ways do we mean that? Enter Sam, the Unitarian, and all our conversations with our Jewish friends. Okay, let's play this other clip. And then we will go onward. Okay, so this is where Nathan Jacobs says existence and whether or not fairies exist, and he references one of his other channels, and then he says he gives an answer from a philosopher's perspective. And I say, I'll read my comment first. I say, no, there is no philosopher's perspective. And this is why I talk about personal knowing so much. There is no, am I still sharing my screen? Yeah. There is no knowledge in general. There is only knowledge in particular. Thank you, Father Stephen Freeman. He has a great video on that. I think if you look up Father Stephen Freeman, there is no knowledge in general. There's only knowledge in particular. I think that's true because there's only knowledge in persons. That's the only place knowledge exists. Unless you want to say that knowledge exists as some angelic reality, like thrones and dominions and powers and principalities. Is there a knowledge angel? Well, then it would exist. Otherwise, things don't exist, because that would be a nominalist abstraction. I think things exist bodied. And by that, I don't mean physicalist bodied. I mean bodied as in a unity of multiplicity. All right, onward. Let's play this other clip. It's just 10 seconds.
By the way, if you're interested in, can I rationally believe in dragons? You might want to check out the episode on belief in fairies, where I go through, from a philosopher's perspective, how to assess the rational belief in that sort of thing. Anyway.
Yeah, let's,
Now, I do think
okay,
this.
that's all. We're done with that. So that's essentially what he said. He's, there is no philosopher's perspective. There isn't, there is no, speaking as a, when people say this, they're a modernist, and they're bringing in identitarian self-identity. And this is probably like a lot of conversation I've been having with my friend Rod. This is probably a lot of this stuff, like speaking as a man. Welcome to intersectionality. Speaking as a father. Speaking as a whatever. All that is not you. Speaking as Luke. That's what you have. Speaking as Luke. That's all I have. And I maybe don't even have that in my fullness, because I'm not completely integrated. When I'll be able to speak fully as Luke? When I'm given my Whitestone name. When I'm given the reality, the full reality of who I am in my proper name. Speaking as a troll. All right, let's play. I don't know if I can play this. This other clip. Was I queued up to play the right clip in this Dawkins versus Peterson thing? Actually, I'd rather play this other one. Let's play this other one, and then I'll open it up, because this is enough. Let's play the Outgrowing New Atheism thing from Alex O'Connor. I like Alex O'Connor. What he says here is great, because what he says here is exactly my favorite Michael Polanyi clip or comment that I like to always bring up. So let's play this little section. Is it working? I'll make it bigger. Make it bigger.
Atheist moral philosophies like utilitarianism, that happiness is actually the goal here. In which case, why are we doing these debates? Why are we like going around trying to convince people? I had a debate with Sabur Ahmad, a Muslim. He's part of like the Dawa scene. And at one point in the debate, I remember him saying something like, well, if you think that like maximizing pleasure, minimizing suffering is the metric for morality, then why are you here? Why are you doing this? Even if you think it's true that there's no God, if studies show that people who believe in God are happier and more fulfilled, then don't you have a moral obligation to shut up? He didn't put it in those words. But I remember thinking afterwards about that and thinking like, yeah, that's an interesting question. Maybe there is something about the decline of New Atheism that's got to do with the fact that even if people still think it's true, they think, that it's going to make people less happy somehow, and therefore they don't want to spread it anymore.
I feel like a lot of the new atheists have stopped talking about religion by and large. It feels like the conversation's moved on almost.
Like what he says there is great. And the only thing that I would add to that is, I'll just quote this Polanyi quote, because it says a lot. And I mean, it's just, I don't know how to say it better, which is why I keep saying it this way, which is, doubt and belief are ultimately equivalent. Doubt relies on a subterranean set of tacit belief in something else. It's subterranean. It's not within your awareness. You can't name it. It's not conscious to you. It exists within you somehow, but in your right brain, in your unknown. And if you know you're unknown, then you know you have, then what your doubt is really belief. Doubt is just belief in not that. If there's something that you can see and name, like this set of propositions, this syllogism, this thing, you grow up with this, you grow up in a certain Christian church and they say, this is God, this is hell, this is judgment, this is punishment. This is what it means to be reconciled to God. And you're like, well, all that sucks. I don't believe that. I doubt that. Then what you're saying is, I believe not that. That's apophatic belief. Does that mean you don't believe in God? No, it means you don't believe in that. I mean, once you see it, it's a pretty simple thing. It's not that complicated. Or as one of my daughters says, like, it's not that deep, man. It is deep, actually, though. I don't know why. That's some new thing. It's not that deep, man. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to open this up. and then read comments because I've talked for a long time. And sometimes when I don't do this for a while, I'm just like, do I want to do this? Do I want to do more live streams? Am I just done doing live streams? Do I want to do something else? Do I not want to do this ever again? Can I even do this anymore? What will I talk about? And then I start talking, and it's like it's like you put 1/4 in my jukebox, and I just can talk forever. It's a real gift. It's a real gift. It's a blessing to the world, I think is what it is. All right, so if you guys want to come play for a while, that's fine. And I will either shut it down in when will I shut it down? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or I'll just let it keep rolling. I'm addicted to attention? Not really. Not really. I just don't mind it. This is one of those ways that Paul likes to mischaracterize me, is he's just like that I'm like an attention whore or something, which isn't true. It doesn't bother me, but very often I don't have any desire or cravings to be a celebrity, because like vast amounts of attention from people who don't know me and who are like sycophantic. Like if you had that kind of thing, it would be gross. I would hate it. I think most people who get it do hate it. It's terrible. Anyhow, morning, my friends. Alex, do you have like your camera set up over here, or do you have two cameras? You're looking.
No, it's just one.
Okay. Good to see you guys. Good morning. What do you have to say?
The first thing I want to say is thank you for reading 1 Corinthians, by the way. I do appreciate you throwing that out there into the ether. I do enjoy hearing different people's point of view, because I don't think we're all wired the same. And because you were wondering whether you should do this or is it worth doing it and this and that. And to be honest, I don't. So no one really knows how much effect one's going to have, even on one person, whether it's today, 5 years from now. We just don't know what. So I'm going to use this to bring another conversation that I heard on TLC to bring the two together. PVK mentioned he was mentioning about the big book, the writing of the big book, and in there, Chad mentioned, because he showed the clip of Chad and Mark Parker, he mentioned the Washingtonians. Now, I had never heard of the Washingtonians, and I think that was proving a point. In the book also, I think it's proving a point. We never heard of them before. Now, I hadn't heard of the Oxford group either. I heard a story of how Carl Jung was somehow indirectly connected to AA. So I kind of knew some story. I didn't know the specific group. But what I'm saying is an encounter changed people's worldview and lifestyle in the millions. Who knows for how long? And I'm talking about AA, right? And it was a chance encounter of how a person that got sober in the Oxford group ended up telling somebody else, Bob Wilson, about it. And he got sober and he's like, hey, this is great, right? So one encounter, that's what I'm saying, is one encounter with one person changed. And this is, you guys have been talking about nesting dolls, fractal patterns. This pattern repeats itself time and time and time and time again for millennium. So should you consider giving this up? It's not for me to decide, but I'm saying you never know who you're going to affect. And even if it's one person, who knows what that person is going to do 5 years from now? We don't know. But anyways, I'll leave it at that.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I had to put in headphones because my computer speakers are so bad. I can barely understand you.
Oh, hopefully. Well, yeah.
I mean, I think I understood what you were saying, but I was trying to go get my headphones because I was like, this is terrible.
Right. I'll let Jason kind of put in his 2 cents because, and if you want me to go over some stuff, we can. If not, that's okay.
Sweet. What up, Jason?
I don't know what to say. I probably shouldn't have joined. I just thought I'd get on here because I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah,
I feel like I haven't been on anything in a long time either. But so are you saying, Alex, you were saying that these patterns, just one encounter with any sort of divine pattern can be life-changing. Is that kind of the point you're making?
Yeah, and the thing is, you don't know, because like when Bob encountered an old friend, when he met the old friend back in the day, he never knew what the future hold, right? And when he got sober, he didn't know what he was going to do either. And one thing leads to another. And now I was beginning to go over that writing of the big book, and what I'm starting to read, because I haven't, it's a big book. What I'm starting to see is there was a lot of choices, a lot of risk involved in trying to plan this, that, uncertainties, choices, chance encounters that change. I mean, because we got hindsight's 2020, and what I'm saying is no one really knows. No one really knows who, what, when, why, where, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Spirit moves where it wills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why I love another one of Jordan Peterson's things that he often says, which is just like speak the truth as clearly as you see it. I mean, a little bit. Here's a question for you guys. Do you think that the belief in like absolutist free speech, which is just like giving the American idea that giving the people the freedom to that even underneath all of our institution of government and constitution, everything is the fundamental belief that people being able to say what they really think is the most fundamental and important human freedom. Do you think that's a Christian thing, or do you think that's an American thing, or both?
That's a tough
Um,
question.
so we only know what we know right now based on what we've learned, right? The only reason why I know this language and Spanish is because that's what I was introduced in. To mention about cultural Christian, right? This is the world we live into right now. So yes, we see through this filter, free speech is, in my opinion, is an improvement versus its opposite. So juxtapose that notion is like very restricted, because who's going to make those choices, and for how many generations? Because that's going to go sideways real quick after a few generations, because that's what history teaches us about human nature.
Well, and it's complicated too, because I think the free speech thing, what I said is saying what you really think. The problem with that is you have to know what you really think. So you have to be an integrated person. It can't just be like bluster and ego or a chaos person or whatever. It's like really what you think, which is, and human beings are always kind of going back and forth.
I'll say this, there is a quality of choice. There's 10 different choices, and one might be better than others. But here's the thing, that the mystery, because you mentioned mysteries, the mystery is no one knows the future. So, but there's a distinction between choices, and some things, in my opinion, some things are better left unsaid, and some things are better to say out loud,
Yeah,
right?
I
Or
think that's
forever
true.
hold your peace.
Jason, what do you think, buddy? Or Mark?
I was gonna say I probably think it's an American thing, but I don't know. I'm not really sure about the whole free speech concept because I've never really had to experience restricted speech. I mean, obviously you do to some degree. I don't know if you've seen that I Think You Should Leave sketch where it's a ghost tour and they're like, you can say whatever, and he starts saying all these dirty, really crass things. And then they start getting mad at him and they're like, you can't do this here. And he's like, you said I could say whatever. So I've experienced some of it, but I don't know. I was just making me think, even just I mean, I think to really entertain that question, you kind of have to get back to just the development of speech. And if you get rid of speech altogether, you get rid of relationality, at least in some way. So it seems very important. Because every word feels like weirdly kind of like an incarnation or something. Like it's boxing in a thought, or it's boxing in a of it's nice. Thanks, Kyle. And so it seems like it's a reduction of thought. Like you're having to frame something in a word. But then completely unbounded speech is just what, like childish babble or something, and so you can't really even understand it.
Yeah.
So you kind of need that restriction in language to actually relate. So I don't know. It seems like it would be extremely important to have that and defend it. But then at the same time, just to say it's free in the way we treat it in this country almost cheapens it sometimes to me. Like I don't know. Sometimes I think you don't want it to swing the other way to give us that revelation of, oh, words are costly. But I think we need that reverence for words and for language before it goes that far. So I don't know. I don't really have I guess, stance on it. It just seems like the political aspect of the debate is usually kind of more an American stance, I would think, rather than a Christian one.
I do have a question.
Okay, quick pause. 5-minute administrative thing. 5 minutes, unless you guys want to keep going, or like Sherry or someone comes on and moderates. We'll just shut her down. I'm gonna listen in. I'll be back.
All right.
Keep going.
So
Go ahead, Al.
I have a question for you. So how many countries would you say there is in right now? Rough guesstimate.
How many countries?
Yeah.
Why you don't? Oh my gosh,
Just
I have no idea. Oh my god.
Oh, a little over. I don't know the answer, so I'm guessing like a little over 100, correct? Okay.
Oh, I would guess more
Okay.
than that for some reason. But I don't know.
Maybe 200-ish, close.
200 countries.
So, but I said this for a reason. I said it for a reason. There's no way of getting around politics because every country has their own government, whether it's localized like a mayor, like someone that makes rules and laws for the town or state or a country. So we can't get around that, right? That's just the way it is. And every country has to decide what is best, supposedly, and I'm going to be careful here. Supposedly, what's going to be best for the city, for the state, for the country, for the territory, you name it. Everybody has to make decisions. So politics, whether I know a lot of people don't like to discuss politics, and I'm one of them as well. But I'm saying in general, we cannot do away with that notion of nothing. Politics can be set aside. Well, actually, no, because if you don't want to make decisions, somebody else is going to make decisions for you in a way. And communication is very important because ideas are powerful, and ideas could be good or bad. And it's the concept of the minute you start having someone, and if that someone doesn't have the best intention for this group or that group, if they decide, hey, this group is not allowed to say anything, can you see how that could be that could play out very in a negative way when who decides what the restrictions are? That's what I'm saying. It's like, I mean, I know that restrictions are needed, but at the same time, they could also, backfire in a way.
Yeah. How's it going?
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, Jerry.
Morning.
I can't turn my camera on. I'm just gonna keep the live stream going for a bit, but yeah, I just woke up and my eyes are in the wrong spot on my face, so they need to migrate slowly to their to where they belong.
Yeah.
Good morning, Max.
Good morning, guys. I'm sorry I can't see all your names on there. I don't come on very often. I'm definitely watch a lot of TLC content though, and think about the same ideas that you guys do. And so what I wanted to say was, Alex, what you're saying about well, two things. Alex, what you just said about how politics, it can kind of get in the way of speech of one group over the other. And I'm reading Simone Weil right now, one essay of hers, and she's saying like real thought is, this is very paraphrased, but real thought is allowing people to maintain similar ideas to the same but contradictory ideas about the same thing that can exist at the same time. So that allows you to, that gives you the, the space or whatever, the stepping off point, like, hey, there's two things that exist at the same time. I need to think about this. And if you have a political interference where, hey, we can't even have that, second idea come into the picture, then then we can't even maintain two similar or two ideas that can exist at the same time together, and that's a bad thing, of course. So just supporting the free speech idea. And then what you said earlier about AA being and these members not knowing the fruit of an encounter with an idea or a person. I was thinking it connected to the Meet John Doe clip that Paul played earlier in the video where the girl was like, even if you're not here anymore, this is going to, a movement will grow in itself again, and which is very hopeful. And that's, I guess, what as Christians, or maybe all of us, kind of have a idea about that. This is Jesus or God or whomever is, has our backs, and he's working something special out throughout time. So yeah, that's what I want to say.
Thank you, Max. That was good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on, actually. It's nice to see new faces here. Jason is almost a new face. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Yep. So
You
where
know,
are you
scenery.
from, Max?
Where am I from? I'm in Pennsylvania right now. Philadelphia area. What about you guys?
Cool. I'm not. I'm in Colorado now. So.
Cool.
I'm in Canada.
I'm in Idaho. Not that many people know where it's at, but yeah, that's where
I
I'm
guess
at right
somebody has to be from Idaho, Alex.
now. Maybe that tells you why I have strange ideas.
And there's Luke Thompson.
Back.
I'm back. I'm having to. I have to leave in a few minutes, but I just want to come on and say hi, Max. That's phenomenal. Everything I've ever heard of Simone Faye is fantastic. I think she's brilliant. So thanks for adding that.
Yeah, she's so interesting. Like she's I don't think she embraces Christianity in so many ways, but I don't think she ever was baptized. She was Jewish. Her family was Jewish. She knew, like, she came from a very intellectual household. She was very smart herself, obviously, knew the Greek tradition very well. So she just has all these, inputs that are very interesting. And she grew up during the First World War, Second World War, and participated in these class movements at with all her effort. And I think she fought in some instances, and even though she was this kind of very weak little person, and she died very young, because this was her whole being was this kind of this is what she lived for. And
she was consumed. She was consumed by, literally.
Yeah.
Did you know that Michael Martin has mentioned this, that I'm trying to think of their names, that's why I didn't say anything right away, but she had two where'd he go?
I don't know.
She had two well, I'll just say in quotation marks, disciples And they ended up calling themselves, one of them called himself Onesimus, and the other one called himself something, another person's name that was a disciple of Paul the Apostle. And Michael Martin was researching Simone Weil at the time, and he was trying to figure out, who she was, like what did she embody? And when he read the names of the two disciples of hers, who changed their names, like they changed their names to these names, he realized that she saw herself as Paul the Apostle, which is I haven't read much of her. I've only read the odd quote and heard Michael expounding on it. But that would be an interesting thing maybe to keep in mind, Max, when you're reading more of her.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Yeah,
there's some echo that somebody has to figure out, but also I'm gonna let you guys go. This is phenomenal. The last thing I would say in my closing word is that I think even the whole Simone Weil thing, and I'm having this question with a couple of my friends who don't. I just went on this big road trip to pick up grass-fed beef, regenerative agriculture, make America healthy again. If you're going to eat meat, eat good meat, and eat true, good, and beautiful meat. And this guy doesn't self-identify as a Christian. He's one of my local estuary buddies. So we had the rancher that I have is from Nebraska, so I had to go drive like 3 hours to western Minnesota to meet him on his way to North Dakota. And so we had like 3 hours out, 3 hours back, just sit in a car, just nonstop talking. It was phenomenal. It was really great. And this is a perennial question in the TLC. What does it mean to be a Christian? Like, is Simone and the way I would understand it and talk about it is it means to embody Christ to the world. And that's about as specific as I can be to that. And like, what does that mean? Right? Yeah, it's complicated. I think most people don't really know what it means to be a Christian. And it's kind of like that thing is Christianity hasn't been tried and found wanting or something. It's not been tried. It's incredibly, incredibly difficult to be a Christian because you got to love your enemies. And I don't think you actually know if you do until you're tested. So, love you guys.
Agreed.
Love you too, Luke.
Does that mean we're your enemies?
What was that, Sherry?
He said, "Love you guys," and I said, "Does that mean we're your enemies?"
Yeah.
What you said earlier, Max, I've been thinking about a lot this year. Just the where you mentioned not really having a true thought till you can hold the opposite one in the other hand with it or something. I don't know. I've just been thinking about that a lot this year, just in kind of the marriage of opposites, or what is seemingly opposite, like they're really two sides to the same coin. Like kind of like Luke always says, like doubt and belief and unbelief are really the same thing. Because if you believe one thing, you're saying I don't believe all these other things, and that seems to be like the more I think about it, the more it seems right. Like all this, like with everything, like even if I think about just like being and non-being, it's really two sides to the same coin, or existence and non-existence. It's like, it's this, I think that seems right to me. And I think that's why even like through Buddhism, or when I hear about Buddhism, I'm not that familiar with it, but it sounds like kind of the first steps of Buddhism is to kind of get rid of all identities and kind of go into this place of weirdly kind of non-existence. Like I don't exist. I've shed my name. I've shed all associations. But then down there, they kind of find this bottom, which is like true existence. So I think they're really two sides to the same coin. Existence and non-existence.
Well, what if you were to think about it as something that fills the other full instead of? Pardon?
One of the reasons why I think
hang on a second.
or you guys are making a point. Go ahead.
Just let me finish that thought.
Sure.
Because you know, they are opposite, but they're only opposite because the other one exists.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you can't have, but there's an equidistance between them. Okay. Like they never actually completely make contact with each other. They're kind of like when you try to put two magnets together, you know, they repel each other in a sense, right? But they don't exist without the other one. So, you know, the example that comes to mind is Christ and Antichrist, right? There's no Antichrist until we have Christ. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
But even in that, I mean, getting that back to what Luke said, I've been, you know, like I mentioned that to him in a chat before, probably in a private chat, was that the more I think about it, the more I think Christ and Antichrist are just two sides of the same coin, because it's really like, and I think the reason for that, if I can explain that a little bit more, is that,
well, it's the same, Jason. What you're saying about the two sides of the coin is the same example as the magnets that repel each other, because whatever is on the other side of the coin will never be in contact with the thing on the other side of the coin. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they are always facing away from each other.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I'm not sure I agree with that, because I almost feel like they have to face each other at some point. I don't know, maybe I'm just not seeing it the same way you are. But I guess the reason I feel like Antichrist and Christ would be the same thing is because, like, yeah, I think you're right. There is like weirdly this distinction where they never quite touch, but then at the same time there's this kind of weird molding, because in things like love your enemies, and then you have Paul saying, I could wish myself a curse from Christ. So there's this weird way, like, becoming, like, true Christianity actually is becoming not antichrist in the sense that like you hate Christ, but becoming like accursed of God, which seems to be like what Jesus actually did or something. If you have the enemies of God, it's weirdly curses everyone who hangs on a tree, and you have Judas hanging on a tree and Jesus hanging on a tree, and both of them are like accursed of God in that moment. And so like, I think it's like you said, there's weirdly like they don't quite touch. There's this weird repulsion between them, but then at the same time, it's kind of almost the same thing, because it's like
I have a different.
If you love your enemies to the fullest. Yeah, sorry.
I have a different way of viewing those two things, like opposites. And I will give you an example. For one, I was born in this world, and the world was before I was even here. So one, I have to accept that things are, and that's, period, right? They're just are, right? So whether I like it or not, they just are. So in the Gospels, they mention Jesus gives a parable about the wheat and the tares, and they're trying to understand, like, what? How come there's tares? I thought you planted good seed, and it turns out that the enemy planted the tares, but they're not going to be taken out. So they just are, right? Two opposites, the wheat and the tares, that represent opposite lifestyles, point of views, whatever you want to, that icon to mean, right? So that idea to mean. So they're just there. But here's where I kind of see differently. Why are they different? Why are they? Because they're uniquely unique, right? The tare is not the wheat, and the wheat is not a tare. So there's a distinction. But what I want to say is, so having those two there, and they're there whether we like it or not, they're just there, and they're going to be there until the harvest, right? So they're just there. But why? So the distinction, remember I mentioned earlier about the quality of choice, the choices that we do, the paths that we choose, we forgo one thing and we choose one over the other. There has to be, well, in my opinion, we should ask the why. Why is this different? Why is that different? Why is this more like Christ? Why is this less like Christ? Right? That's where I'm saying about the two opposites, and they're there.
I think Jan God makes a really good point here when it comes to this concept, because essentially what you're talking about is opponent processing. So you have two things that are opposite, quote unquote opposite, because I think that's somehow an illusion. But that's another topic.
Well, Christ that's in the gospel, so I don't know if that's an illusion or not. I mean,
yeah. But what they do is they bring each other into being. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what opponent processing does. Okay. So when it comes to the wheat and the tares, for example, when we first moved up to Telegraph Creek and we're homesteading up there, there was a woman who had been there for like 20 years already. And actually more than that, 30. And she said, don't weed your garden until the weeds are at least 4 or 5 inches tall, because what they do is they afford shade and moisture to the seeds that you planted in the ground, and it allows for those seeds to germinate, right? And once your carrots or cabbage or whatever it is that you actually planted and want grow, you leave those weeds to keep them sheltered from the elements. The weeds act like a greenhouse, which and I mean, this is not gardening 101, okay? This is actually a spiritual lesson, is what it is. And
I do have a question whenever you're done.
And so after that, once those little plants have hardened off, have had some adversity, right? Then you can remove the weeds. And when you remove the weeds, you always risk killing some of those smaller plants that haven't had, full sunlight or the wind or whatever the thing is. And I think that, this is the conclusion that I've come to when it comes to adversity in the world, is that it is a way of strengthening whatever needs to be strengthened. I mean, we've all seen pictures of trees on cliffs hanging. Their roots are just clinging to a little bit of dirt, and the wind is always on them, and they're completely twisted. Right? That's a good image. Yeah.
So I do want to ask you a question. Now, so there's no misunderstanding. I'll say something, then I'll ask my question. In the parable that Jesus gave about the wheat and the tares, it is the angels that do the reaping. So I'm not saying that because I don't think that we should do any kind of. That's for the angels. That's for God to decide. But my question is there a distinction, like in its physical essence? Like, is there a distinction? Like, if I was to show you a wheat and then a carrot, right, or a wheat and a tear and a carrot, or a tear and a wheat, is there a actual distinction? Is there characteristic? Is there actually, are they the same or are they distinct?
Well, here's the thing.
So why? And if so, why?
Luke's just saying here, what is a weed? Is it like a predator or a dragon? Okay, so Luke left here saying, love your enemies. Okay. So
my question is there a distinction?
I'm getting to it. I'm getting to your question. But here's the thing. If you love your enemy, then you have no enemy. Okay? Because
is there a distinction between if I was to show you a weed and a carrot, or a weed and wheat, will there be a distinction? If I showed it to a kid and said, hey, can you tell me which one is the carrot and which one is the weed? Would they be able to say, I can see the difference?
Okay, so let me just finish my train of thought. I kind of meander when I make a point, so you just have to be really patient with me because everything connects for me. So I'll try to do this as succinctly as possible, but I will get to the distinction part. So if you love your enemies, and then you have no enemy, then how do you distinguish between what is your enemy and what is not your enemy? Okay. And the enemy becomes the thing that makes you who you are. There's a beautiful prayer by an Orthodox saint. I think he's a saint now. Bless my enemies. I don't know if anyone's ever heard it here. But he
there
basically,
are enemies that you, right? Because we should love our enemies, meaning there are some, meaning that's you're saying that they don't exist? They do exist, but we should treat them the way God wants us to treat them. But my point is, they do exist. I mean, out of 8 billion people, you think that all people want Christianity? You don't think people want to stop Christianity at all costs? Look at history. I mean,
I think all people ultimately want Christianity. I do think all people, yeah, I do think there are distinctions. So you're going to ask me that, if you're asking that question, is there a difference between a flower and a weed? Then yes, because there's a difference between me and you. But so there's a difference between you and your enemy. But then if you truly love your enemy, then you're just looking in a mirror. So I think that's the weird paradox.
Yeah, the Christians
you are your enemy. Because we all are Adam. So it's kind of like saying the difference between a weed and a flower, they're both plants. Like they're both part of the same thing. They're part of the same soil, part of the same earth. So it's like there is a difference, but there isn't. So you can't get rid of distinctions altogether.
Here's where, so great. Now here's the distinction. And again, I'm going to use the scripture, not my opinion, because my opinion is faulty. We do not battle against flesh and blood. So yes, I do agree with people are people. I want to make the distinction about what is the battle between Christianity and non-Christianity. We do not wrestle against flesh or blood, but against powers and principalities in the heavenly places. This realm, which, it's whatever you want. I'm not disagreeing with the Christian concept about loving our enemies. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. I do want to say that there is a distinction. There's a distinction, and there are motives, and there's people that have done horrible things in history. So that's already done. It's in the books.
If you are sent to a gulag, I think the distinction becomes quite stark. Right? Like if you're an Orthodox priest and you get sent to a gulag, but how does that distinction help you? Does that make it any easier for you? I don't think so. I think loving the enemy.
Okay, that's great.
Right,
great.
Makes
yes.
Let me finish, Alex. So what you have to have are distinctions without division. Okay, that's what loving your enemy means. You've made the distinction that this person is an enemy, but you choose to love them. So you do not divide, okay, as a result of it.
Agree.
And in the process, that enemy becomes your opponent process, the mechanism through which you can opponent process, right? And become a better person. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so I'm not disagreeing with you, but this is what I want to say. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the scripture because my opinion is just my opinion. In the scripture, in the letters of John, he clearly makes a distinction about the spirit of Antichrist, and he gives a warning about the Gnostic teachings. So what I'm saying is not to separate, not to cause harm. That's not where I'm going with this. You misunderstand me. What I'm saying is,
I don't misunderstand.
The enemy, whatever that is, the teachings that they're going to bring. Remember, there's some entities in the spiritual realm that want to stop Christianity. Full stop. Okay, we have to distinguish those ideas so they don't undo our belief. Remember, if I'm going to be a Christian, if I'm set to be a Christian and learn Christian things, then I have to understand what is real from the warnings that the disciples gave us, the warning that the Polycarp, the first bishop, the disciple of John, all that stuff is written down, right? So I'm not hoodwinked. That's what That's
Okay.
the point I
I
was
think
trying to
I,
get at.
I think
Not to divide, but to
I
say,
just wanted.
beware, be cautious.
I got you. I just wanted to welcome Jer. Hi, Jer.
Hi, how are you doing?
I think I'm going to say
Good.
goodbye
How are
because
you? How are you?
How's everybody? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, thank you. You heading, Alex? Okay, take care, man.
oh, no, I'm still
Hi.
sitting here just saying hi.
Max is still here.
Hey, Max, how are you doing? Hey, Jason. Hey, Shari.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to. So, one thing I was thinking about. I was listening a bit about the. I'll just do one section. I'll just listen one thing a bit about the Iliad today, right? And one of the themes that was coming up there was the ever-present issue of death and how they had to handle their sense of honor, how they had to handle their desire for glory. And, you know, one of the constant contrasts in it is the coming death of all the mortals, and then the gods who are the described as the undying ones. And I thought it was just a nice counterframe to this notion of opponent processing about it's also alternate storylines, right? I thought that's kind of a different way to alternate story tracks or interlapping storylines, because there is a sense where the gods are omnipotent and people like Achilles are striving against their own mortality. And you can kind of think of that as an opponent processing aspect of it. But I think sometimes that kind of creates this binary that can be a bit limiting. And, you know, you kind of miss the fact, maybe we miss the fact that there's opponent processing is interacting. As Donald Trump might say, it's the weave, right? It's weaving in at different levels, right? And, you know, so Thetis, the mother of Achilles, is a goddess, and yet she's, you know, maternal, she's careful, she listens and supports. But then Athena, who is the supporter of Odysseus, she can be chased away, you know, she can be scared away by one of the Trojans from helping Odysseus. So there's different layers. So I just kind of like the idea of looking at opponent processing as storylines.
It totally is. Yeah, it totally is. And I mean, I wear my opponent processing on my sleeve. I mean, if you can see my avatar. My avatar is it's MC Escher. It's called Angels and Demons. And depending on how, you know, depending on what stands out to you, you see either angels or demons, right? And this is another aspect to perception that I think is really interesting. You know, Martin Shaw said to me once, we make things holy by the kind of attention we give to them, right? To make something holy is to set it apart, like to make it stand out, right? To make it, and of course, Simone Weil is all about attention. And so if you want to focus on the enemy, then you will find the enemy. If you want to focus on loving your enemy, then you will find ways to love your enemy, right? So, and I personally, I'm a little averse to looking for the enemy, because what ends up happening most of the time is everything becomes your enemy. So, and I mean, that's a great way to drive yourself insane, in my opinion. But anyway, but yeah, and opponent processing too happens, like in your example, Jer, of the Greek myths. A lot of that too is an internal opponent processing, right? It's a wrestling with the passions, which become the gods, and so we have to, you know, this is the beauty of God's wisdom, is that it penetrates into our very core, but it's also available to us within the cosmos, right? Within nature herself. And yeah.
That's, you know, the idea of, you know, if you look at people talking about how demons interact in the world and stuff, you know, like C.S. Lewis or some of the earlier, like this guy, John Cassian, who have been trying to jump into a bit. the Roman times. And it's all about the notion of it's something that tugs at you, right, in your mind, And then for some strange reason, we don't seem to look, or at least we don't seem to acknowledge it as openly, that the Greek experience must have been fairly similar, So like in the Iliad, when Achilles is pissed off with Agamemnon and he's about to draw his sword, and then is it Athena or Venus grabs him by the hair and jerks at him, right? And that stops him, but nobody else notices it, right? Why? Because it's something in his spirit, right? It's something that pulls at him, right? And it kind of interesting to think, right, that type of approach is exactly the same thing as what we talk about with demons, except for them it was quasi beneficial.
Yeah, I think it was for most ancient people, actually. Like even the Desert Fathers, like a lot of them went out there just to wrestle with demons, Like they literally went out there to wrestle with demons.
Yeah, that John Cassian, it was a desert father, and he writes a book on like 8 types of temptations, and they're all like, it's demons, right? It's demons,
Yeah, they're all demons. So. Yeah, and Jeremy was telling me last Lives of the Saints that we did that when you go to visit a monk in his cell, you have to say, "Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner," before you enter. Otherwise, they're not sure if you're a demon or not. Like, you actually have to send up a prayer that they can hear. Because if you were a demon, you couldn't pray, right? In the name of Jesus.
Yeah, it's self-excluding.
So, like, this is like some serious encountering that's happening in monasteries and with monastics. Yeah. Anyway.
What was that book called, Jer? For John Cassian and the 8 Temptations.
Well, I just have a book on. It's called, I think, Calming the Mind. It's one of these kind of reprints of. So I don't know the original name, but his name is John, just as in regular, and Cassian, Cassian. He's a desert father, but he has. I think it might be called On Temptations or something like that. But I've just got some. The one I have is just a kind of an excerpt, and it's got full of. It's just this modern kind of, put it to the bookshops title.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool, Mark. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say the Philokalia is full of instruction like this too, if you're interested. That's also widely available. Go ahead, Jer.
Well, I just wanted to, a micro digression just to say, I think, Max, you were saying you were new-ish, but had also jumped on, and I am kind of somewhat in a similar boat, and I just thought, I just wanted to say I thought it was really cool that you did that, and good for you, man. I hope to see you more.
Mm-hmm.
Same, man.
Yeah, it's awesome, Max. Really good.
Did you have something to say earlier, Max? Because it sounded like you were about to chime in.
Yeah, I think like I heard Tom Holland on Socrates in the City, one of these interviews he was doing. He was kind of riffing and saying that, all these, he's speaking about politics and how all of our things that we are concerned about, like you could say immigration or abortion or education, all these things are, people think they're political questions, but they're theological questions, because Holland's thesis that that Christianity has kind of made the world, made Western society as it is. So even the strong non-believer who is this big liberal who has all their causes and stuff, and they're advancing them politically, he framed it as these are theological questions, which I thought was very interesting to think about. And I didn't know how I've been asking people this question, what does that mean? And, how do we address that? And, in the context of what we've been talking about, loving your enemy, I'm also very into Rene Girard, and he has like, the scapegoating mechanism. And he's like, one of his big things is like, you don't know, like a good scapegoat is one that you don't know is a scapegoat. And you're just like, yeah, that person's guilty. That's not even a thought in my mind that that person could ever be innocent. And I think Eve Girard even says like, I have my own scapegoats. And I think that is one of the toughest things, is to kind of maybe I'd try to identify them, and then maybe that helps us in this balancing to, maybe it helps us in thinking and to balance two opposite or contradictory things that can both be right, and helps us think. Because if we just trying to gather my thoughts, like if we can't balance the contradictory things, we can't have these quote unquote political discussions with one another, and we can't, then we're just scapegoating one another.
Yeah.
And
I just want to ask you, like when I hear you talking about scapegoating, what I think about is dehumanizing, right? Like, that's why we don't call it scapehumaning. We call it scapegoating. Like, they are not human, right? Yeah. Whoever you scapegoat is no longer human. And this is what happens to our enemies if we don't love them, right? So when we love something, what's actually happening on a psychological level is we are empathically resonating with it. We can love a flower. We can love a rock, right? This is how Goethe discovered that the leaf becomes the flower, by empathically resonating with the plant, which is what love is, right? So when you love something, you actually are validating its isness. It's who it is, right? And when you do that, you cannot scapegoat it. It will always be who it is, who it really is. And scapegoating can't happen, because scapegoating can only happen when you forget who that person is, right? And it happens. I mean, look at all the atrocities in the 20th century. Like, we stand there, and this is what Jordan Peterson was very quick to remind everyone of. You don't think you could have been a Nazi guard in a concentration camp? Think again, right? We have this ability to dehumanize one another and commit atrocities that, if given any length of time, we could overcome. We could overcome that, right? Because it's actually not rational to do. The rational thing to do is to empathically resonate with the other person, to see them as another human being. So anyway, those were my thoughts when you were talking. I'm going to mute myself, but I'm still here, guys. Okay. I just got to do a bunch of stuff.
And then it happens too with, like, we can scape human ourselves as well, where, it's our fault, and we can, go all the way, maybe to like a Judas type of thing, where it's, I'm to suicide, where it's, how I need to dehumanize myself enough and get rid of myself. And I think that is also another Christian, well, maybe not, I don't want to say that, but maybe in some sense, no, it's the Antichrist of of Christianity, because you could, people say like, you know, humans are so bad that we need to get rid of humans. They'd cause all this destruction in the world. Why would we have kids? All these things. And, you know, and that's, yeah, that's taking the opposite side of, you know, it's someone else's fault. It's us, it's humans, it's me. And, but maybe that's even harder to reconcile with, in some sense. But I don't know. What were you guys thinking about the thing I was saying about Tom Holland when he said like everything's a theological question?
I don't know if anyone was there. Oh, Jer, or how do you? Is it Jer?
Yeah, Jer would be good.
Sure.
Okay. Just to throw out an idea. So what jumped into my mind was, you know, the Augustinian book. It's called The City of God, but the Latin for it is De Civitatis Dei. So it's like De Civitate Dei. It's the civic body. You know, civis is civilian. So Civitatis is be like the matters of the interests of all the people, the kind of the common collective duties and responsibilities, obligations and benefits that everybody has within would have been originally the Roman Republic, right? And then as time went by, the word changed until by the time of Augustine, when the whole show was falling to pieces, it had kind of begun to have more a meaning of a city, but maybe we should kind of think of it as the civic body of God, right? Not just the city on the hill. It's not just this kind of arbitrary structure, but which is how I at least think of a city, right? I think of a city as a set of buildings, streets, and infrastructure, and I tend to forget that actually, you know, that's half of it. The rest of it is the people whose lives are in it, how they interact, and how, like I was thinking yesterday about how in I would have been in America as well, of course, but in Europe also, the milkman used to drop bottles at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, would just leave them on the street, and people would, you know, get their bottles. Like they would be left there for 1 or 2 hours in the morning, right? Whereas I'd be fairly sure now if you still had that system, you know, there'd be instances where like every single bottle on like 10 blocks or 10 streets were all smashed just for no reason other than, you know, ignorance of spirit. So, I mean, the fact that's kind of like it's the social interactions. So that's what I was thinking about, Max, because that's what Tom Holland is really into, isn't it? He's like, you know, the kind of, or at least that's what I was thinking about it. It's how you, if the city of God for Augustine is the thing that, you know, pulls us up and how we're supposed to structure our lives, then it really comes down, we should really think of it not as the kind of like this unattainable destination, you know, or this destination, but actually the journey to it is to build the social structures that reflect that city of God. You know, how do you bring that down onto, how do you make it immanent in the world? By building social structures such that you would be able to have a very high trust society. And that, yeah, am I rambling or does that make sense?
No, I think that's great. I think that's what's remarkable about our times, I think, is that we, like what Peugeot said recently, or I don't know if it was recently, but maybe relatively recently, where he was talking about like the reason that we can talk about these things so in such a deconstructed way is just because things have become so deconstructed. We don't live these things out, like you're saying, like the Augustine times or before, right before him. We don't, the high trust society is not with us anymore. So we kind of have to deconstruct these things to kind of, you know, to figure them out, figure out how all this works. And I think that's like, if we didn't know that beforehand and some like really know it, if you know what I'm saying, then maybe now, because we are able to know it like in a materialistic, like engineering type of way, that we know the right ways of being that bear the good fruits, and that just helps us to maybe we know what blocks we need to put together to make the right type of environment. But then again, that's you know, that we don't, I guess, want that can be co-opted, I guess, in a way that is diabolical, because, you know, we could, the kind of like what's the Dostoevsky chapter in Brothers Karamazov, where Jesus comes back and the priests are like, we don't need you anymore. I forget, but looks like we lost everyone. Oopsies. All right, well, I guess that's it. I don't know. Sherry, did something happen? I guess we gotta go. All right.
Hang on. What? They left?
I don't know. Jason and Jared just said, Jason said I gotta hop off soon. Jared said, thanks, Jason. Take care.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. When you were talking, I was listening, and you were talking about the Grand Inquisitor.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's unfortunate that they had to go. Well, unfortunately, I have to go too, but I guess we'll end the stream here.
Okay.
It is mysterious, Jan God. It's like things were just rolling. I was enjoying the conversation.
Same. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah.
I've never seen like anything that before.
It wasn't anything you said. Just wanted to be sure. I thought it was great, actually.
Yeah, it was great talking with Sherry. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it was good. I feel like I want to wrap it up somehow. Oh, there's Jer again. Oh, good.
Sorry about that. Luckily, the link was still remaining.
Oh, good.
Apologize that I got that I jumped out, Max.
No worries.
Can you give me a 60-second resummation of what you were saying, because something was in my mind, and I
about the deconstruction, and now we're able to maybe build the building blocks, but we don't want to co-opt it for ourselves and make it like a Grand Inquisitor type of thing. And then I guess the last thing I'd say is that the TLC is, I think, really helping and helping with the discernment and making sure that is pointed in the right direction.
When you were talking, what I was thinking about the Stoics, right? Which I think if you're kind of interested in stuff, many people in this area are interested in reading somebody like Marcus Aurelius, or, you know, say, oh, this is all good stuff, right? You know, whether you think it's the best of it or not, you generally kind of go, this is very interesting stuff. And the Stoics came about because of the repression in Hellenistic Greece. So, like, you know, post Alexander Greece and Greek world, and then by the time it gets into to Rome, you know, you've it's gone through the mills of like a brutal century of almost continuous war, nearly a century of continuous war and civil strife, until the time it gets to the emperors, and then you're under despots and lunatics, and you no longer. The whole story is one of lacking agency, lacking ability to influence the world, lacking ability to do anything, right? And from that, they actually learn how to. They come up with stoicism in the sense that we know what kind of comes about, right? So there's a strange dynamic of when things really fall to pieces at times and social trust collapses, right? Then at times people can begin to rebuild instinctually, which is scary, right? Because are we rebuilding, or are we like the Stoics, just a kind of an interesting flash in the pan, right? Because things just continue really, really bad for a couple of centuries. So that's a challenging thought.
Yeah, I don't know, the being like real. I don't know if this is the right. I'm using this terminology correctly, but the realpolitik kind of thing is like, things don't change politically until you get the mandate, the people's mandate to do something, kind of thing. Like, to operate outside of the law in some sense. Like you have a political leader that can operate outside the law because the society, the citizens, the people are okay with it and desire it. And that, at least just speaking for the United States, like I don't just kind of riffing off what you're saying, like I don't know if that's like where we are right now is yeah, if and what that mandate might be, it's certainly something, what could that possibly be? I don't know, but certainly not uninteresting. But it's, what I think it's also very frightening too, because it's like any kind of change from what we have now might, in some sense, it's like we live in a very kind of liberal, very, in a lot of ways, very peaceful society and abundant society, and so you wouldn't really want to change that. But then there's also this strong desire for things really do need to change. And how can we keep the ethics and the same while having a change that is good and in all the ways that we want it to be? And yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling, I guess. But I what you said before about the ignorant spirit or something like that, or the people breaking the bottles, the milk bottles in the street kind of thing. I don't know. I think that maybe it needs to be more the enlightened spirit, like just a little bit more discernment in this area for things to maybe move beyond how things have been going, I guess, for a little bit of time. And I think maybe a good example of that is maybe like nuclear energy, where this people have had this idea. They think nuclear energy is this horrible thing, but it's actually something that could, at least to my understanding, really transform energy, bring the cost down of energy, and transform so many physical aspects of our society in a better way. But we have like first, a lot of reasons, there's the people don't like it because it's associated with nuclear weapons, and there's probably a lot of lobbying to not advance it. And the storage, I guess, is something, but now it's kind of being raised to the like, well, that this is something like the Overton window is kind of breaking in that regard. And, maybe this, we can start doing things in this arena. And I'm hoping that, like, going forward, this spiritual understanding of like maybe just like generally speaking, like Tom Holland's thesis, just like, can we at least accept that we have like these are we got our ethics from Christianity, and like, and now we have the the two things that are existing maybe at the same time. We have the theological and the scientific material existing at the same time. What do we do about that? And we can start having meaningful discussions about that, hopefully maybe in political spaces, and then it can then we can have better politics, better dealings with one another. I don't know, maybe that's not realistic, but
Max, do you see nuclear as having a kind of a Gerard scapegoat aspect to it, right? Because the people look backwards and respond very slowly in time to development. So I think a lot of the last maybe 15 years in American politics has been a breaking down of the I don't like Reagan, he's too bad, and I do like the other guys because they're just trying to help people. And I think, at least certainly, I know people on this side, on the European side of the water, who would have certain views about the political parties in America that would be very much grounded in that frame, right? America's probably a bit more updated simply because you guys it's immediate to you. But on this side of the water, I would be fairly sure that many people would have notions about Kamala that would be based on not liking Reagan, and would have notions about the Republicans that would be based on not liking Reagan. Whereas time has moved on, and the political currents are eddying very quickly. So I kind of think it's the same with nuclear, that many people who were influenced by the cultural times of the 80s and there are complex factors behind that, have continued to be against nuclear, but haven't then responded to the question of is nuclear simply tactically and strategically necessary, like irrespective of anything? Like, does the bare continuation of our society at the standard of living we have, does it mandate nuclear? And that's a fair question in my mind. So, but in that sense, I kind of wonder, is nuclear kind of Gerardian scapegoat, right? It's like, rather than facing the hardships of this conversation, it's much easier just to send nuclear into the distance and leave it run off the cliff or whatever, and it's like we never have to think about it.
Yeah. I think that and that happens with medicine too, like with COVID now. It's like, and with all these institutions, like in so many things that something bad happens, and then it's like, and then there's a consensus about it, and then because scapegoating happens mostly with crowds, that it's like, okay, we formed a consensus about it, that means it's bad, and any discussion that we have about it, we can't it's not fruitful in any single way, because we've made the consensus. And like and that's like, Peter Thiel is really where I'm getting most of this stuff from, where he's talks about like the nuclear thing being scapegoated and COVID, and he in some he had a discussion with some climate person who was advocating for more fossil fuels and stuff, and he was saying like, you know, that it's sometimes better just to not even just to do things, you know, just speaking like entrepreneurially or politically, to do things and not have it be in the public, because once it's put out there, then it, you know, it becomes more fragile in some ways, just because it can get, you know, there's opinions that can be formulated from it, and they can be scapegoated. And so it's better to not, in the way that we're like, hey, why can't, like, let's have this discussion about nuclear or whatever. It's better just to do it, and then, you know, deal with the repercussions afterwards. But I guess that's.
So I've read some of Gerard, or I've listened to it, but listened to some of him, but I haven't listened to enough to be able to think this through. Does he talk about stability of scapegoat? And what I mean by is that if you have a stable society, you have probably a stable set of scapegoats. If you have an unstable society, you probably have an ever-varying set of scapegoats as you choose to react or pivot from one side to another, right? So kind of like 1984, right? 1984 is the ever-changing scapegoat in a sense, right? Or at least the ever-changing enemy. I think enemy can kind of somewhat overlap with scapegoat, although there is a distinction between the two of them. But there is this kind of ever-changing, you know, that sense of instability of always having a different scapegoat. It's or at least changing who constitutes the scapegoat, right? That there's some play there of, I'm wondering about instability. Do you know if what Gerard thinks about that or talks about that?
Well, I think the interesting thing, I think, is that definitely, like, the scapegoat is the founding, you know, the founding murder is the foundation of society. All good kings are good scapegoats. But the thing about it, like, the incredibly revelatory thing about it is that, you know, the scapegoating provides the foundation for society. We can put blame on a victim. So whatever was happening in our society, you know, that there's some kind of peace established, but that peace is always temporary. And you know, we need another scapegoat to, once some kind of calamity happens again, so we can all come together as a crowd and be like, okay, yeah, you know, we agree, you know, that this person or thing is the problem. And now we can all interact with each other amicably. But with Christ revealing this process to humanity, now that system doesn't work as well anymore. So, you know, we didn't stop burning witches, or we didn't invent science and then stop burning witches. We stopped burning witches and then invented science. So, you know, we realized the immorality of the behavior after the fact, and then we implement new things to prevent that from happening again. And that is, but at the same time, it's like, okay, that we're getting rid of our training wheels, you know, and how can we live together when we're like, we have to love our enemies, we, you know, it's the kind, you know, and that's why I think Christian society in the West, at least, you know, or maybe the whole world, this is why Christianity is maybe accelerated, because you know, the last will be first will be last, you know, and then we see the innocent victim in in everything, and we can't scapegoat as well anymore. So so what I would say is that the maybe scary thing is that like we need bigger and bigger scapegoats, like maybe more of them, to satisfy the system, to that's why I think maybe Trump has just been such a, maybe this is a bad example, but Trump has been such a great scapegoat because he's I don't know. I think that's a bad example. Maybe I don't know, or I don't know how to say it. But I think maybe a better example is the I'm going to scapegoat humanity, or I'm going to scapegoat with COVID. I'm going to scapegoat the unvaccinated, and we're just going to make it this huge amount of of people, or a huge. The problem is this huge thing, and yeah. So that's I guess what I was thinking when you were saying that.
You mentioned about the good kings, a king being a good scapegoat, and it reminded me of there are things in Ireland called the bodies in the bog. I think they have them in Denmark as well. That's probably because there are bogs, and the bogs are acidic and keeps the flesh intact and preserves or dries out. It kind of mummifies the people, right? But they would kill people. Many of them were kings, and that would protect and define and intertwine the people of the land represented by the king with the land itself, right? So there was that's almost like a scapegoat, right? You're just like kind of. I think that's when you mentioned about the kings, the good king being a scapegoat, I thought to myself, yeah, that because a scapegoat is not like, I think we have a kind of maybe a quasi unidimensional definition of, or thinking of scapegoat as being, the taking away of the bad, or the kind of loading it up onto somebody else. But in a sense, when they were sacrificing people to the goddesses or gods of the land, or so it would have been the goddess of sovereignty, goddess of the land. In a sense, they were taking all the fear of losing sovereignty, all the fear of losing that link between the divine and the kind of the power, on the ground. And that king, whether he went willingly or unwillingly, was a kind of a scapegoat, because he carries with him all the potential for disaster. And in that sense, I suppose Christianity has that kind of. That's the kind of like where the scapegoat mechanism can kind of break down in the sense of Christianity, because there is that sacrificial notion of the scapegoat, rather than the scapegoat being the dupe who gets shafted by everybody. Sometimes so in a sense, right, is not Christ a scapegoat, right? Because he's not a dupe, but he takes on all the stupid things that people have historically done forever. He takes upon his shoulders and says, I'm going to carry this one for you guys, right? You've got to. So in that sense, the scapegoat, sent off into the desert, has that same notion, right? And yeah, I guess there's an element then of how that kind of transcends that,
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, like we in America, we put so much emphasis on the presidential election, but we live in a republic, and we're supposed to, which is supposed to be this balance of powers, where maybe definitely our local and state officials should matter more to us than the presidential, whoever the president is. But we don't take the personal responsibility, maybe like maybe like having, I don't know, just the personal responsibility to create the society we want, or the personal responsibility that we've been gifted to make our communities how we want and to allow other communities to live how they want to live. And instead we are so focused on, if we can just get rid of Kamala, if we can just get rid of Donald Trump, because that's what it all is like, it's not necessarily about the policies or anything like that. It's about getting rid of the other people. And which is just, but what you're saying about the divinely, the connection between the divine and, the world, the physical, like Peter Thiel had his interview with Joe Rogan. At the beginning, and throughout the conversation, they talk about, like, Joe Rogan's really big on, like, kind of aliens and stuff, and Thiel was like, I think the pyramids were, these were the first tombs of the scapegoat, like, and like, the pharaoh, whenever they became, incapable of ruling or something like this, they would, be, it's like, it's the pile of rocks, the stoning kind of thing. But in a sense, but what the crazy thing is that they were able to build these massive structures with these primitive, tools and such, but it just was so, what made them want to do that, to build such a thing, to build the tomb to that in that way, and I don't know, it's just that's just the fascinating thing, that just the connection that they wanted to have, that connection of the divine and the physical, and but also they're in the scapegoating kind of system, and yeah, we're obviously still in that system, and but I don't know, it's Gerard's last book, Battling to the End, the like, there's like a Holderlin quote at the end, which is like, I have to look over here. But where danger threatens, that which saves from it also grows. And I don't know if that's showing or not, but yeah, that's what I think about in the kind of scapegoating environment, that we're like, it's like where the escalatory scapegoating, where the danger threatens, that which saves also grows. And that's the spirit, that's Jesus. And yeah, no, that was a whole lot, but yeah, that's what I was thinking about what you said.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't want to be a black pillar, but it's something I worry. I wonder about, because I want the restoration, right? I want the return to what was before. And I look at so, like, you talked about so, there was one of your guys, was it Jackson? He said, "A republic if you can keep it." Yeah. And I'm kind of mindful about that aspect of it, and like a republic being democracy with limitations and checks put up upon it and filters, right? But one of the things I'm very mindful of is that, when win that fascinating body of men who were the Stoics, who became, as individuals, independent, kind of independent men, right? In that, ready to face their death. And so somebody like Seneca, who gets told, go kill yourself. And he goes like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. But you think I'm going to be messed around by it? That's a kind of an ultimate assertion of your independence in the face of tyranny. So they were remarkable people, but they were remarkable people brought about and becoming remarkable by living and coming from an area that had suffered intense dictatorial power, or tyrannical power would be a better way of putting it, for a long, long time, outside of Rome and then eventually in Rome. And it didn't work, right? It didn't work. It just led for this bloom, which was so powerful that even now we're able to read about it. And then the other part of it that reminds me is that if you look at like Rome from about the 130s, and then there's a whole lot of civic violence, and then you get to 90 BC, and then into the 80s and 70s. There's continuous violence and bloodshed until you get down to after Caesar's dead, after Brutus and all them are dead. Is that after or before? It doesn't matter. I'm not sure, but at least it's around that time where you have like the second group of three men who run the country, and once more they do a thing which is called prescriptions, and they create lists, and it's kind of like a Joe Stalin type approach of hey, if anybody finds this guy, you kill him, we'll get a reward, and if he has money on him, you take it, right? And that's how Cicero dies. He gets put on a list because he dicked around Mark Antony, and Mark Antony's like, no, fuck you, you're gonna, that's it, man. Your name is going down, right? And his name goes down, he gets killed. The bloodshed is intense, right? And only after that, and the final battle against Mark Antony and Cleopatra, does Rome settle down into what we now look back at as the golden age, right? The golden age of the empire, the first start of it, right? And it's brief and it blooms, but it keeps, the empire continues as a well-run place, or at least tolerably well-run place, until about 180 or something like that. So the first stability and happiness and peace that people might have experienced in their lives, or in many generations of their family, comes after the mass slaughters of the triumvirate, the second triumvirate. And then you kind of think to yourself, wow, man, so is that where stability comes, right? Is that the hard stop? And how do you do a hard stop in a situation in democracy where you have to negotiate and think about it and kind of argue? And in Rome, they eventually just went, look, we've been fighting for 60 years. Now it's going to stop. And so I think that's part of the challenge of how, as societies, we're going forward, right? In that, that is a political option, is the kind of idea of simply smashing your enemies, as opposed to the challenging option, which I guess is the option we would probably prefer, of trying to incorporate your enemies through dialogue and fellowship and reconstituting the body. That's the dilemma.
Guys, I have to interrupt because I'm going to have to go here soon. But I was just reading through a poem, and I hit on a part that I thought was, related to the topic. It's a poem by George MacDonald called A Hidden Life. And in the poem, he has this little stanza. Father, we need thy winter as thy spring. We need thy earthquakes as thy summer showers. But through them all thy strong arms carry us, thy strong heart bearing large share in our grief. Because thou lovest goodness more than joy, In them thou lovest, thou dost let them grieve. We must not vex thee with our peevish cries, but look into thy face and hold thee fast and say, O Father, Father, when the pain seems overstrong. Remember our poor hearts. We never grasp the zenith of our time. We have no spring except in winter prayers, but we believe, alas, we only hope, that one day we shall thank thee perfectly for every disappointment, pang, and shame that drove us to the bosom of thy love.
Thank you, Sherry. And Max, thank you for an enjoyable conversation. I appreciate it. And Sherry,
Yeah,
thank you for letting us go on, eh?
Oh no, I was listening, and it was great. And like I said before, it's nice to see new faces. So hope to see more of you, Max, and you too, Jar. Yeah, you only occasionally grace us with your presence, and I really love it.
Thank you. That's kind of you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great being
Okay,
with you guys. Nice meeting you, and yeah, hopefully be back soon.
Okay,
Sounds good.
perfect.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.